everybody. We're here with the amazing learning experience designers here at Design 39 Campus because we want to create the future. And that happens because we co-create. We don't just give you the schedule and say, good luck. We say, what is it that you need and desire, and how do we pivot and create those conditions of awesome learning? Because we know we're in a different space right now, specifically for middle school. So I didn't share this data in our last ones. When you look specifically at the data of TK8, it was about 57% of our families wanted to be on campus. Kyle and team looked at the data specifically for 6-8. It was about 66% of our families wanted to be on campus. So over 2/3. So you can see there's probably gonna be some tensions that happen when we have those Padlet walls. The LEDs looked at all of that data. And then what happened is they said, we have a couple more questions. We wanna know a little bit more. And so let me show you kind of what we're thinking about right now doing is you're gonna have this Padlet wall. I'll show you that shortly. But what's most critical is how we design. We actually design with empathy at the heart. So these are our culture cards. We use these to hire. We just use these today for our kindergarten. And understanding, literally kind of digging in, because ultimately this is what we're looking for, is researching through that ambiguity, because there's all kinds of different ideas out there. So how do we like dig underneath that ultimately to find insights? And that's what we're looking for, because those insights are going to create the innovation that makes Design 39 awesome. And that's why we prototype for greatness. And we're looking for those awesome experiences that we really want, not just because we've done it for the last 100 years, it's because on March 13th, something happened and we got to look at the world differently. So because of that, we have to have designers with us. That means you, the parents, the students, we'll hear a little bit more about that. And so we're super excited to have our learning experience designers with us. So Kyle, Abby, and it looks like Glenn, could you introduce and say hello?
Hey,
sure. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
8th grade STEM. I'll pass it on to Kyle.
I'm Kyle Osmus. I teach 8th grade math and science as well. And I'm also a parent of a kindergartner at Design 39 Campus and a 2nd grader at Design 39 Campus. So I know exactly what all of you are feeling and thinking, and your fears and your worries. So I share them with you, and I'm hoping that we can work together and learn from each other to really create a powerful year here together.
And I'm Abby Cavendish. I teach 6th grade STEM. I was telling the team that I get super energized by the work talking to parents and students. That's what really, excites us about figuring out what to prioritize this year and how we can make it awesome for your kids. So appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
So what's been happening mostly around the country is 5 or 6 people sit around a table and they say, here's a schedule. It's so exciting. We're going to promote that and send that out to y'all, and we hope you like it. Or we could do design sessions like Tanay. Hey, Tanay's on our design team. He's working with our students. Imagine that, put students at the table to design with. So we always say who's at the table and who's not. And so we have our whole student design team. They're actually on a national convention happening on Monday. That's how rad they are, right, Tanay? And so they're kicking off a virtual learning. How do you design with empathy and equity and start with failure? Interesting. So if you want to hear more about that, come on Monday, right, Tanay? Well, you can maybe give us some information on that. But what's critical about today is we have some questions. We went through all that data, and we're going to start it off with a Padlet wall. You guys are getting really good at these, I know. And this is what it looks like. It's digging into empathy. There's going to be a first question here. I'll share this in the Padlet, in the chat box. And then you just go in here because, those quiet voices want to make sure everyone is heard. So if you take a look, I'm going to type that in here, share here. And if you can click on that link, and we're going to get started with the first question. So Abby, Kyle.
I can introduce this one. So my mind automatically goes to structure. That's just who I am as a person. And when I was reading the Padlet wall, I was noticing this kind of dichotomy between some families want more flexibility with pre-recorded lessons, kind of working at their own pace throughout the day, versus this need for structure and more scheduled time and scheduled Zooms and scheduled live instruction. So our question is, how do we balance the needs for those who want more structured with those who need more flexibility? So would love to hear kind of your thoughts and perspectives around that, especially as we go into planning a schedule and what day-to-day of virtual learning looks like.
Fantastic introduction, Abby. So the way to do this is either raise your hand in the chat space there, participation, or just go ahead and start talking. So you heard from Abby there was about how do we balance that need for that structure and flexibility? we have good wait time. So some of the things that resonated for you, like when you're thinking about your work at home, like what's going to help you?
Hey, Joe, it's Mark.
I knew I can count on you, Mark.
I think it's a great question, because one of the things that's come up too is like those of us who are two working parent families, one parent working families. I think, Abby, to your question, I think what's really helpful is understanding that, you know, as much as we're trying to design the school experience as if we were on campus, there's the reality that we're not, right? And I think that if there was some type of hybrid that allows for a schedule through the day, the school day that is, right? Let's call it 9 to 3-ish, where students can follow it, but obviously there's a flexibility that assignments aren't due at the end of that period, right? That some students are going to be dealing with bridge. Some parents just simply cannot sit there and monitor their kids throughout the day. They may not have an interest, or just by the nature of their work, they just cannot do it. And understanding that there may be certain times where there's an obligation, whether it's a Zoom meeting, a class meeting, something like that, but that there's other assignments where there's some type of period that either it's done through the day or it may have to be done in the evening, because that's the reality of that family schedule. And understanding that, especially with middle school, as they start to issue homework and assignments, that it's not just simply, you know, you have this assignment to do the next day. There may need to be some flexibility with that. I think that could be a balance, right? My wife and I are very much into structure as well, and that really helps guide the way it is with our 3 children. But I know that that's not the case for families. And I think that D39 is really, really good at understanding the unique situations. And I think that could really help with, you know, this assignment is due by this period, by this date, or it's by, you know, Friday, or within 48 hours. So it gives that flexibility.
I wanted to add to that, if that's okay. Hi guys, and Abby, so great to see you. We live 2 doors down from Mark, and we love them. We're great friends, and they love structure and we love flexibility. And I actually want to piggyback on Mark, not to disagree, but to say that given too much flexibility, which it felt like we had, I mean, the spring, you guys have done an amazing job, but the spring, I feel like we've fallen personally as a family, because we have actually jobs that do have flexibility into, let's get up really late and let's stay up really late. And if there are assignments due through the week, one child wants to do them at 10 p.m. So I think there is a huge value to going, no, you're going to get up at 9 and you're going to be on this meeting at 9. And we all used to be at school at 9. This coming from a person who really likes the flexibility, you still kind of are craving structure. So I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, in that, yes, it's nice to have flexibility throughout the week, but I like the idea, especially as they're getting older and, you know, we're like, we used to go to school 6 hours a day. Like, instead of we used to walk them out of school, that's now our, you know, what we say, but I want them to experience that and to have the sense of accountability and responsibility to themselves. I'm done.
Beautiful. That was super helpful. I appreciate it. You're not like the middle school kids. Don't look at me. Right? We're looking at you. I'm looking at each one of you. All right, add to that or something new.
Yeah,
We have
Joe,
2 more minutes on this conversation.
Hey, Joe, this is Jason Rosenfeld. You know, just one thing that I'd say is, especially that these are 6th to 8th graders as they're continuing to grow, is to give them the flexibility to almost help create, especially with the design learning and design thinking, to create the schedule, right? Give them the construct as, you know, one of those assignments to make sure that they have the say as to what their day and their week is going to look like, but then hold them accountable to meeting that schedule. So that there's both the flexibility and that autonomy that they have. I think that's going to be important.
Helpful. We often talk about agency, so that's a good one that might be coming up a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Anything next? Okay, great. We're going to lead into the next one. If something pops up, it'll maybe connect to another question. So remember, these are questions that the LEDs already looked at all that other data. Now they're just trying to dig in a little bit more. So this next one has to do about balancing between on and offline. Mr. Osmus, would you be so kind?
Sure. And I really appreciate those of you guys that have spoken up, because pretty much everything that I've heard so far has spoke to me. I think it's important to, you know, especially as we get into those 6th through 8th grade levels, the autonomy, the agency is important, and developing that is really critical. So our next question that we kind of thought about as we were looking at the Padlet was this idea of screen time and offline time. So the question we have is, how do we balance online learning with offline learning? Because obviously we don't want our kids staring at a screen from 8 to 3. It's important to be closing their computers, their iPads, and connecting with other kids, and just good old-fashioned learning as well. And also something too that kind of connects with the last question is we do really want to focus on this idea of learning between 8 and 3, and I know there's going to be some flexibility with bridge and not getting home till a little bit later, but we did have a lot of kids last year like submitting assignments at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 11 p.m. So being able to establish boundaries on what that online time looks like and what the offline time looks like. So how do we balance that?
Thank you, Mr. Osmus. Either raise a hand or get right in it. And our kids aren't going to save you, because I know they want to jump right in, but that's a different session. Thoughts? Some stuff is going inside of here if you look at the digging into the empathy piece wall. So this idea of taking breaks, and maybe I'll address that as you guys are percolating. So when we had our empathy session with our students and designing way forward, they were talking about, hey, Mr. E, that learning happens even outside the classroom. I'm like, what do you mean? Tell me more. Yeah, when we're walking down the hallway, or we're going down the stairs, or we're sitting at the lunch table, learning is happening. We're talking about that problem. We're talking about that really funny thing Mr. Osmus did when he was driving his car down the road, right? So learning is happening. And so these spaces that are naturally created for kids to kind of interact that aren't in the session, like there are 40 kids looking at you all at once, like what you guys are doing to me. How do we break them apart, and how do we get them into this space, and how do they get on the Padlet wall and like disconnect and then come back in? And so that's what we're looking for, is those nice, cool insights like the kids shared. Mr. E, we learn all the time. So I was punting so you guys could be brave. Liz, I'm looking at you.
This is Amanda Carlson and Kevin again. I think that some of the things where you can have that is where it's not necessarily, or it doesn't feel as much online, is in smaller groups. In smaller group sessions where, I know they talked about like doing an assignment, breaking out and then coming back into smaller group sessions. And then I feel like, especially for my older son, he gets really nervous to talk. And like you said, where 40 people are staring at you, Zoom is not normal. You don't look at, when people are talking in real life, right? You're not looking at them as intently in a room as you are on Zoom. And so having the smaller sessions, even though it still is quote unquote screen, but just giving them the opportunity to kind of have that free flow thinking and collaboration with each other in smaller groups, I think also would help a lot versus just the big classroom discussions.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's actually going to come up a little bit in the next question too.
Yeah, just the idea of purposeful Zoom. How do you use that effectively?
I think Hi. Sorry, I was going to ask something. This is Serena Brennis, Jonathan Brennis's mom. So in regards to, I was in the meeting with kids that have IEPs, and one of my concerns is that how are they going to break up the different subjects and teachers for the kids? And is it going to be a block schedule? And will all of the meetings be done by noon so that, for example, because like both my husband and I work, and so are they able to go to the bridge for the afternoon?
That's great insight, especially as two working parents, this need to kind of have some structure so that you can then utilize other resources, other parents, other micro pods, other like micro connections. So one thing I can tell you right now, and I know Abby could probably add to this in terms of some thinking, early thinking, we need to empathize first before we can actually design, but some early thinking around this. One is that our staff, our Welcome Center staff, Connie and Mary and all of our teachers have been working really tirelessly for the last week and two and into last year to get rosters done. So that means Friday, yes, tomorrow, Friday, you'll have your students roster, meaning the kids that are in their classes, so you can start to make those connections, and also who's the teacher and what does that cluster look like? The reason for that is so that we can make these early connections, not starting on September 2nd, but starting today. We think that's really important. That's happening 3 weeks before anybody else, just so you know. The other purpose of that is that we don't want to be moving kids all around. We want to have some structure and some stability. It's kind of been like this shake table, right? And then something new and shake table and something new. No, here's the class. We're not going to move kids, develop the relationships, get this thing moving in the right direction. And so that's the intentionality around that. So then teachers can start to reach out to you. They can start to talk to you and make connections. Abby, any other kind of highlights around that?
Yeah, I think just to kind of answer your question as far as schedules go, we're kind of looking at students having some time with their STEM teacher and their humanities teacher, and then having blocks throughout the day for small group collaboration, for MIM, for office hours if they need one-on-one question time. And those would run from 8:45 to 2:55 like a normal school day. So not all of it would be online, and that's where we want to do the empathy before the ideating. And we're working within that 8:45 to 2:45 school day. And hearing about how we can accommodate your needs at home and when that schedule may not work for you.
Yeah, it's a good question also in the chat. How much will school change if we're allowed to come back on campus, be it next week, in January, or whenever? That's why we're trying to design these experiences so the rosters don't change. With the LED, the learning keeps going. We're not having to have this kind of you got it, you didn't kind of experience. So really designing it now is to be flexible enough to be able to kick back into what we do best on campus. So that's a great question there. All right.
I feel pretty strongly about that too, because we've already been meeting, we've already been planning, and we're not going to plan just to have it like just throw it out as soon as we end up going back. Like the whole intention is that we're planning something intentional and good from the beginning that would just be a slight transition instead of a wholesale change once we get back on campus.
And if a good empathy designer over there would say, hey, Katie, is that important that we like flip everything upside down, or are you looking for some stability? That was Katie's comment. I would imagine, Katie, are you looking for stability? Katie Harris.
Yes, stability. I just typed in the chat.
Yeah, sometimes you can kind of read between the lines with empathy, right?
A lot of background noise. Had to run somewhere quiet.
Oh, good. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to then segue into the next question. We'll probably take a pause, let the LEDs kind of meander in that space too to hear anything else they want to dig into, and then we'll go to the next question. Abby, if you could be so kind to take the next question, and it has to do with Zoom, or maybe, all right, Glenn, why don't you take the Zoom one?
Yeah, that sounds good. So obviously Zoom is a tool we're sort of stuck with at this point. And I know we've all done a lot of Zooms. I mean, you've probably done a bunch, but we've done a ton since last spring. And as Kyle was saying before, like we need to, we want to make sure that our screen time is meaningful, and we want to develop good habits that are going to be transferable to when we come back to school. And so many of the Zooms we did have many different results. Like a lot of times, the best things I saw were like showcases of learning. Our humanities in 8th grade did poetry slams, and they invited the STEM teachers, and I went to every single one because it was a blast. It was super fun. It was great to see the students in a different light. On the other hand, if sometimes if you put a sign up that says office hours, that's looked at as, oh, well, that's optional, and then we don't need to do that. And then, I'm sitting there waiting for somebody to show up. Sure, I get a couple kids, and that's great. But I know my focus this fall is going to be more on small groups rather than just like, hey, pop in office hours, or that might be something that fits into the afternoon of a schedule like Abby had mentioned. And we've also talked about doing some flipped type things where students are getting a chance to experience the content. Then when we're in the Zoom, it's meaningful discussions. We're working through, math problems. We're having, debates or discussions. So I think really it has a lot to do with, creating some expectations of what students, agency is going to be required, that we want them to show up, that we want to see their faces, and there's going to be some basic etiquette things we need to sort of hammer out too. And then when we get to those really awesome showcases of learning, they go great, and the students get to share and they get to talk and they're in charge, instead of us trying to replicate, hey, this is school, where we're just talking to you through Zoom and you're sitting there and we can see your face, because
Thanks, Glenn.
that's not
Yep.
exciting. That's
So-
not fun.
So what we're looking for is, how do we do purposeful Zoom? And what are those bits? Because when we look at Design 39 Campus and maintaining our relevancy, we want to make sure that we're doing the very best bits when we're on a Zoom call. So what are those things? So how should we be utilizing Zoom? So we're looking for your feed forward on that.
Please share, because I'll be jotting stuff down as people give out good ideas.
Hi, Joe, again. We were in Palm Springs or just on Sunday, and I was talking to the girls about what they liked best about distance learning. And one of the things that Serena said is that she said it's one thing, and I don't know because I didn't do it, so I'm just kind of relaying what she said, but it's better for her when she could have the teacher, the LED, actually explain the lesson instead of, here, look at all these things and then do the problem. I think that's the thing that she missed the most. Both my girls said that, and really wanting to still have, like, the image of school, and you have the teacher teaching whatever it is, and 2 + 2 = 4, and everyone's writing it down and kind of learning together. I feel like maybe that wasn't as strong in March, but that's one of the things that she had told me.
Super helpful. Who wants to add to that or start a new thread with Zoom? Purposely done.
It's Amanda Carlson again, really quick. I think that one of the things I've noticed, and maybe a little bit more of my younger than the other one, is that it's very distracted. Like, I don't know if there's a feature on Zoom where you can just have it be on speaker view only, versus letting people the kids and adults even cycle through to just look at everyone's faces, because it's so tempting to do that, right? And then you miss what the speaker is being said. I'm not sure if that's a possibility with Zoom or not, but I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, you have a good insight. The students were mentioning that as well. So if you look at the Zoom session right now, how much distractibility is on the screen? So if you know at Design 39 Campus, this is basically what it looks like, right? White spaces, right? Why? Because it's a lot of distractibility. So kids are already understanding that. Or you see the ones with the seagulls in the back and half their face is missing because the green screen doesn't work the right way. So the critical piece on this is, where does your child set up their learning space, right? So are they in their bed? Is it on their lap, and does it look like this, right? It's not helpful. So setting up a routine for your child is really critical. And that means we need to also have those routines. So great insight about distractibility on Zoom. What else? We have 1 more minute on this.
Joe, this is Jason again. With distractibility, Zoom does have a whiteboarding feature. So I think some of the comments were actual instruction, in terms of leveraging the whiteboard just like they do in the classroom. That would be helpful. And when the whiteboard feature is used, then it's the whiteboard that people see, not the speaker's view, in Zoom as well.
Yeah, Kyle gives out a bajillion points when kids collaborate effectively outside of him and they learn from him. Mr. Osmus, maybe 15 seconds on that idea.
Yeah, so as far as we did see a lot of push on our Padlet wall for ensuring kids are collaborating, and we just wanted, rather than pose the question, we kind of just wanted to let you guys know that collaboration is on the front of our minds. So that's one of our primary goals, is how do we foster a collaborative environment in the virtual learning model, because we know usually in this environment, that's the first thing that goes. And we all know that learning doesn't happen in isolation. It happens way better when we're together. So your middle school teachers are looking at different ways that we can access tools and each other in order to kind of foster that collaborative environment that we all know we all need.
Love it. Just state it right out at the top, right, Kyle? Yes, collaboration. It's critical. All right, so we're gonna move now to just maybe some open time for the three LEDs to kind of what they heard. Is there any other clarifying questions with these first few questions? And then we'll jump into the last three. Abby, Kyle, or Glenn?
So I'll go, and I just, maybe if there's anybody out there that wants to, I just want to push a little bit more on the Zoom, because the biggest tension we saw on the Padlet as far as Zoom, where there was a lot of thumbs up for schedule Zoom, and then there was a lot of thumbs up for no more Zoom or less Zoom. So that's kind of where we were trying to probe with this idea of how do you see us using Zoom purposefully, so we're not Zooming your kids to death, but we're also not totally distant where they forget what we look like. So I don't know if there's any ideas, or just, I guess, so that's also on our minds, that we're trying to figure out that delicate balance to make sure we're making those connections, but not just, a kid's not going to learn by just staring at their teacher on Zoom all day. It's just not going to happen. So how do we do that purposefully, I think is kind of our goal. And if anybody has input, or we just kind of continue to work in that area, I guess, as teachers.
Hey Joe, it's Sheena or Kyle. Is it possible to have it look like, and I'm new to 6th through 8th, just because I've been with younger grades, but is it possible to have it look similar to what the regular school day would look like? So when the teacher teaches, they're on Zoom. When they're on projects, they can go in different groups, whatever that looks like. When there's independent work, they're off Zoom. I think always at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day is a great chance to just check in, make sure kids are okay, they're on task. I agree. I don't think sitting on Zoom all day, every day is a good idea, but I also think that a daily, check-in or the opportunity to meet with the teacher daily is super helpful. So like I said, I don't know what the day looks like normally for 6th or 8th, but if there's a way to have it mirror a little bit of what a normal, as if they were in class, would look like, it might be easy, and also an easy transition once they do get back into school, that it's not, that's familiar to them.
Awesome insight. Vanessa?
Yeah, so aside from the teaching part, I think Zoom is really important for connecting. So my 8th grader here said that last year what he really appreciated during distance learning was they were actually optional sessions set up by his homeroom teacher, but it was just an optional, just get together and talk and chat. And it was that there was no agenda, there's no organized question. It was just, you can go on and just say whatever you want with the LED there. And I think especially with middle school, with, this age kids, and, these kids hang out. They don't play date. They don't, they do stuff together. They hang out. That's kind of what they do. Like middle schoolers talk to each other. And I think they're missing that part of it as well. And the ability to hang out and chat with their LEDs too, like that's gone when they're not on campus together.
So yeah, Vanessa, this is Kyle again. I just want to thumbs up your comment, because I did have office hours last year, and my office hours quickly turned from instruction to conversation. So we just had some really special and just really fun conversations with students. I had kids literally logging in to talk about basketball. So I totally understand that kids just need that person to talk to, the same things we would do in the classroom. So I appreciate that voice.
So I have a question. If we're going to split up the Zoom meetings, how many pieces are we going to split it up into? Like, if we're going to take breaks in between each one, how many pieces or how many times are we going to?
So the question is, how should we split it up for you?
So what do you think you should do? Hi, by the way, this is Fadi Nasrallah, and Chris was asking a question.
We know Chris. So Chris, this is an empathy interview, not for us to answer for you, but you to give us some input onto what should that look like? What would be helpful for you?
So we should probably split it up as if it was like an actual school day. So like have like a lunch or quote lunch break or stuff like that. So like a lunch, snack, or other breaks in between. So it's kind of like a normal school day schedule, but related to Zoom.
So why is that important to you?
I don't know.
Why is it important? Why do you think it's
Because
important?
well, I don't know.
Keeps you in the same routine?
Yeah. No, it's not really that. It's just like
But think about that. If it comes up, what is it that's helpful in being in a space where you have these breaks and recess, lunch-ish, whatever we call that, time to connect.
Going to have to take breaks in between. I just said like that because like the old school day, like before COVID, when we like we would have breaks in between the day. For example, like snack breaks and other stuff like that. Although we're going to higher breaks, higher grades, so there's not going to be like a snack, but like or stuff like that related. So
Awesome, that's helpful. Manish.
So one thing I noticed like last year, right, means when we are talking about breaks, it would be nice if you could think of a technology where kids can, at school when they're taking a break, they interact with each other. But right now what we have is they can only interact with each other with an LED there. There is like, how do they collaborate if they want to collaborate outside of the like LED supervised sessions? So something to think about, like if we could get some technology where they can communicate with each other, that would be great.
That's really helpful, that idea of natural connections. I know our collaborative is working with that and connecting our current families with new families, connections so we can have these micro meetups. You'll hear a little bit later about the loft being open, things like that. So how can we do this safely? Because we have our safety team made up with, Vanessa here and our other doctors, pediatricians, Dr. Fatty, right? So we have us all working together to make sure we can kind of vet those opportunities together so it's safe. Okay, we're gonna pivot now to the next one. Go ahead,
Sorry, I meant virtual connection too, sorry. Just I wanted to add to that, yeah.
And I was gonna chime on that as well. I think what Chris was trying to say is
I didn't literally mean lunch.
Have many breaks and have lunches. He actually meant like really spending time with other kids in the class. And the problem in my mind is that means they're again still on the screen time, so they're not really breaking away from the screen. But at the same time, that's so important. Like it's so cool to have them chat about stuff that's not school related, like they do at lunch or their breaks.
Yeah. So some clarification in the chat. Salone family, can you just that idea of like on and off Zoom sessions? Because I think you want to maybe unpack that a little bit for us. If you'd be so kind. I think it's Serena.
Hi.
Thanks,
So
Serena.
I pretty much kind of heard that, they want to keep it as close to a regular school day as possible. But
I don't know if we lost you. She might have cut out. So there's, as you know, there's these tensions between what does it look like in a typical school day and being on Zoom. So are you there? All right.
Yeah. So, as far as that goes, and as far as keeping, the structure and everything around like what a regular school day would be like, I think it's a lot, and it sounds daunting, and it sounds, being, okay, so we have a 9 a.m. Zoom, and then we have a, 10 a.m. And so keeping track of all of that, and, and obviously we want our kids to be held accountable. We want our kids to, understand what they're supposed to be doing. But, especially families that have multiple kids, like, it's a lot to
Yeah.
figure out. So
You're cutting out just a little bit. But what I did here is you brought up a very interesting insight around a parent, multiple kids, keeping track, and how do we do that effectively? So I think that's a great take back for us, that ensuring like if kids are on and off Zooms and making sure they're accountable to that, and what's the system to make sure they're there, and all those pieces, really great insight. Thank you for that. Abby, we're going to pivot into the next one, which is around resource allocation, student agency. You want to talk us through that one?
Yeah, it kind of leads in from what Serena was saying is, well, this idea of, the nature of virtual learning means that we really need a partnership at home. We cannot be there in person with your students. And we want to respect, if you're a working parent and you didn't sign up to be a teacher, we know that. And we also know that your kids are in middle school and we really want to foster that agency and advocacy. So our question for you kind of came out of that, which is how do we build student agency in distance learning while also giving parents the resources they need to support their students? And what resources and check-ins do you need as a parent? I'm just going to leave it at that. I have my ideas, but I'm curious what yours are.
Definitely having a structure for the day would be helpful to keep them like accountable for their own activity, right? Because me personally, I work better with the schedule. Like, the work, we know we have a calendar that we are following, what we need to accomplish, like having a to-do list for that day. So at the end of the day, what our goal to accomplish is, it doesn't matter, you have to be in front of Zoom all day long, and there is, you're in front of the computer for all day long, but at least work towards a goal on a daily basis than waiting till the last minute. I think, when they are virtual, having that accountability would definitely be helpful to structure that day and work towards a daily goal.
Hey, can I add on for just a second here? So something that was really great for my son initially was he fumbled when we first came out. He had a lot of assignments that he was behind in, and he had to then come up with his own schedule to get back where he needed to be. And the confidence that came from him having to figure it out on his own, I couldn't have done if I would have had him so scheduled. So he needed to fail in order to come up with his own schedule. And the confidence that he walked away with at the end of the learning was priceless because it wasn't so adult scripted. So that was just kind of a different different outlook.
Brandy, did you do anything to like coach him on that or like look at altitude with him? I'm just curious, like what was the moment that Jake was like, oh crap, and then and how did that interaction happen between you guys?
We had our own morning kind of meetings where we kind of checked in and said, what do you have to do today? What do I have to do today? So we had our own kind of like family morning meetings, like, because our days didn't always look the same. They were different depending on what was happening with my work schedule, with the kids' different Zoom schedules. So every morning we had a family morning meeting. And initially I was trying to like say, okay, you need to get these 3 assignments done. I had to let him fail though, to where we got to, there was a point that he had 17 assignments and he was like, oh my God. And I didn't rescue him. I said, what are you going to do to get to where you need to be? And he did that on his own. He was not happy initially, but I had to let him do that. I had to let him fail and figure it out. And by the end, he was like waking up first thing in the morning. He knew exactly what he needed to do. But it was really impressive to watch him kind of go through that struggle on his own.
Thanks for sharing that vulnerable space about just a parenting tip, morning meetings as a family. Nice insight. Vanessa.
Yeah, so I agree with Brandy. I think our kids at this point would benefit from being able to figure out how to manage their time. And so what my son was saying is that knowing what needs to be done and when it needs to be done with enough time ahead of time, so that it's not all due on the same day. So I think that's some of the coordination between the different LEDs so that, he might have 2 assignments due on Tuesday and 2 on Friday and not 4 on Friday. So he figured out how to manage his time and, pretty much he figured out how to make his own schedule. Like he's going to do his own exercise first and then figure out from there how he's going to manage it. And so I think some kids may put a lot of work into it. They may put the minimum into it. I think that's a different piece of it, but If they know what they need to get done when, and that's all in a central repository for them to see, then they manage from there. It's just like work, like projects.
I see, Abjeet, you're talking about a Scrum, right? The Scrum board that we have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Basically having that, what they need to accomplish, the project goal would definitely help them to figure out themselves.
We're gonna have Manny close out this question. Manny.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for all the effort. And I want to add to that because I totally agree. Like Tara, my kid, 6th grader, was very behind and I didn't even know it. I thought, oh, it's just, no school. And she even thought, oh, I don't have to do everything. It's not mandatory. And we actually got an email from the teacher, which really helped because they said, hey, you guys, Tara is very behind. And they had a one-on-one Zoom with her and us. So I want to say that really helped because she realized, oh, this is the things I have to do. These are my options. And she realized that, oh, everybody's there to help her. It's not like we're forcing her or anything like that. So suddenly things changed. Like from honestly D grade, she ended up getting B+ and A's in 2 weeks, which was really, because then she realized, oh, this is what I have to do. This is the schedule. It's a set schedule. And I think that one-on-one Zoom was very important. So maybe if we can even do like each kid had like a 15-minute, 30 minutes per week, mandatory one-on-ones, like you have to be there. So they kind of know, oh, this is what I have to do. I'm behind here. That might actually really help too. And we actually have that with my 2nd grader. Their teacher have every week set date, one-on-one with Darian. And they would talk about not just school subjects, but other things during the day too. Which I think maybe with the older kids, you don't really need to talk about everything. Maybe just focus on what they have to finish or where they're behind. That would be great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Hey, one quick recommendation. Maybe we can utilize Canvas more. Like, normally we would get only assignments with like due dates. Maybe even learning what you are expected, not force it to have the flexibility, but even add the learning part. Like, you should do these chapters by these days and stuff like that. Something that is not graded, but kind of added to their calendars.
Yeah, there were some other notes in there about having shared Google calendars between families, the calendar within Canvas, ways to connect with Altitude Learning. So great feed forward for us to consider. Thank you. Kyle, I think you're going to bring us home with this idea of thinking about deep dives, explorations, workshops, electives.
Yeah, so, and then I just kind of jotted down a few things that I just want to touch on, just that some of you guys briefly talked about. I like the comment about, making sure that kids have that time to, it's not like they have like 15 things due in one day. So just as a reassurance to parents, teachers at the grade levels talk all the time. I swear last year during distance learning, I probably talked to my 3 8th grade colleagues more than I did my wife. So we are constantly talking and planning and making sure that, your kids will not be, drowning day one. The other thing is in March 13th, when we went to the kind of emergency distance learning, we're kind of set up for failure when it was kind of declared that learning was optional for those first 3 weeks. And I think that got into a lot of students' head was, this isn't real. This is, I don't have to learn right now. So I'll declare it right now, learning is no longer optional. So when we start school, learning is going to happen. So, and then the last thing is all the calendars talk, just a reminder that there are MyConnect calendars and teachers are really good about putting, the assignments on their due dates, all those things. So maybe being able to, when school starts, just being able to sit down with your students, kind of go through Canvas with them, and they can kind of start teaching you about that calendar and what that looks like for them. And they can kind of give them tips on how to manage their schedule there. So just a couple things. And then our last question around this idea, because we did see the thumbs up of workshops and electives and things like that. So our question is, how can we as LEDs empower kids to develop, actually I should say LEDs and parents, how can we empower kids to develop their own elective style learning? Because a lot of our electives, as you guys know, we can't recreate those through Zoom. So, I mean, we can, our goal as teachers is to try to integrate things as much as possible. So bring in the arts and the computer science things into our core academic instruction. But really, how can we as parents and teachers help foster learner agency for students to kind of create their own elective style classes? Or students out there, what might be some things that you would want to see or what you would like to do?
And Abby, can you think also a little bit around when Kyle says integrated opportunities with electives? That's kind of mind blowing. And like, how do we figure that out? Because typically I went to school, I sat for 50 minutes, I did my math. I sat for another 50 minutes, I did my language arts. And then maybe I got my electives. But if I was a bad kid, I went to more math. So tell me what you're thinking around when you say integration of content and bring in electives. Curious.
One of the like beautiful things about Design 39 is our electives are developed by the superpowers of our team, and our team, well, I'm biased obviously, but our team is amazing and brilliant. And I'm like thinking of my colleague Mackenzie Grimmer, for example, has this passion in VAPA, visual and performing arts, and I am obviously love STEM. So when I think about, you know, bringing those awesome learning experiences online, I think about how we can integrate things like PLTW into our STEM curriculum, how I can draw on the superpowers of my colleagues to figure out how they can show their knowledge in different ways. Maybe it's through those art avenues. So thinking about, you know, more creative ways of integrating the elective into our day. So it's not this other separate thing that kids have to sign on for. It's them being able to explore their passions and apply their learning in a way that's meaningful and new to them. If that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. You need to work on your passion when you're talking about learning, I'm just saying.
Hey, Joe, this is Mark again. So as it relates to these things, I'm actually curious about, again, I don't know, we're new to 6-8, so middle school's new for us, but I'm not sure if there's, you know, they use the Makeries or they use some of the other, you know, spaces that have been used in the lower grades. But, you know, it could be helpful that if there's some type of engineering project or some type of design project, and there's, you know, traditionally, if we were in person, there's materials or projects that would be, you know, provided by the school. Is there a way that there could be a pickup for parents? And I know this is some planning in advance, but then the parents could get the kit. You know, shout out to Liz Chan, who's on this. Her husband did a really good job over the summer with Mrs. Diaz, where they had projects where basically they did these Corey projects. And, you know, basically there was a kit that was, in that case, delivered. And I understand with so many kids, that's challenging. And parents, you know, if they could, a week in advance, have this time to pick up these kits, and then they're able to do, whether it's Corey or whether it's some of these other projects and materials, it would really be helpful. I think another thing too would be, you know, what are other projects that they can do that aren't materials based, but are also knowledge based? So for example, I have no idea what social studies curriculum looks like in 6-8, but, you know, on top of the global pandemic, we do have a presidential election coming up, right? And this isn't about politics and who you vote for. And, you know, obviously that could be part of it, but, you know, I think integrating sort of the what's going on in the world outside of COVID would be very, very helpful. And some types of projects, especially something like that impact through how does our government work? How do congressional elections work? What does it mean to vote by mail? All these different things. I think that would be very helpful as well.
Really helpful.
I can speak a little bit to that just really because I obviously am a math science person, so social studies is not my thing, but I can assure you that eighth grade social studies is U.S. history, and I guarantee you those two teachers in that space are already planning on what types of things they can be doing with kids around obviously globally what's happening, and then closer to home our election coming up. So just our teachers are masters of weaving in real world things that are currently happening and doing it in meaningful ways. So, but yes, that is extremely important. So I appreciate that.
And the idea too that came out of like the TK3 and 4-5 is this idea around these design kits, and how often do you come through like a drive-through parking lot and get a design kit, and what are those things that you need? Another way for human interaction, wave and smile. So those are things that we're looking for too, is as we get closer to the start of campus, our collaborative wants to support with that. That kicks into our 39 days of giving and being able to get the right supports and resources because of that. So we're coming to the end of the time, and I do want to give a little bit of space for some final comments, specifically from some of the critical players in this space, our students. So Tanae, I know you're there. I saw Tejas, I saw you on the call. I think Risha was there as well. Just some of the work that you guys are doing, because it's not just about our parents and our LEDs being at the table, it's critically about our students being at the table and having conversations around what learning should look like and how does it resonate. So Tanae, you can talk about that in just a second. But what I do want to share is that just today, the LEDs, our learning experience designers, received a phone call, or rather an email from the collaborative, our parent collaborative. And they said, you know, you've been working tirelessly. We understand that you get paid for the 3 days before school starts. Yet we want to just honor you with saying, here's 6 hours of timesheet time that we just want to say thank you. That money comes from you, from 39 days of giving, because there's no greater investment than investing in our teachers to do planning before school starts. And so a big appreciation. I know the LEDs saw that. We clearly know they spend 6 hours a day thinking about this. So I just from the parent standpoint, we really appreciate your donations to make that happen. We couldn't do that otherwise. And it makes them feel honored, like they have a profession and they have something of solid contribution. Also, we'll be doing things like we're opening up the loft next week, and our loft is amazing. Every year, starting way back with Liz Chan and Sai and team, was putting $10,000 in books in both physically and virtually. And so we'll be doing some sessions just to get you to see what is available at our local space here. For instance, our Overdrive has 2,800 books in it alone for 6 to 8. We just got all kinds of new resources for equity and inclusion, books for that, and support. So, and that comes because of 39 days of giving. So really, next week, we're going to have a session. It's going to be for our new counselors. We have 2 fabulous new counselors, and they're just a bundle of energy. So you get to meet them next week. So we have a male and a female counselor coming up as our 2 counselors are taking a leave. So amazing people, you get to meet them next week. We'll talk a little bit more about 39 days of giving and how that's really, really supportive of our work. Most critically, I was just doing the math here. We had 500 families join in this design jam today. So think about that for a second. We did a TK3 session at 5 o'clock, a 4-5 session at 6 o'clock, and a 6-8 session at 7 o'clock, with 500 families joining in to think about what the future of learning should look like. That's super unique. So I have on the call here also, before Tanae, you get on, is Brandy. Brandy was a teacher of ours. She also has kids here, but she also teaches across 15 campuses as an exploration teacher. And she understands, like, when you get your roster 3 weeks before, what does that feel like? So maybe Brandy, give a little insight on just a mom, teacher, and district employee, really.
Well, you know, I shared earlier in the 4-5 how grateful, and I don't know if our parents truly understand. I know that we say we love our LEDs, but you guys, it doesn't happen like this across the district. For us to be able to be part of the conversation, to bring us to the table, it's a blessing. So I hope that you guys understand how powerful it is for us to sit here and help design and create something that is going to be so amazing for our children. And I watch what happens across the district, and you know, I'm not putting down anybody at all, but gosh, we are so lucky to be sitting at the table and have our voices be heard. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, LEDs. It doesn't happen everywhere like this, even in our district. So blessed to be here and just to have a voice and to kind of feel like we're figuring out this path together, wherever that might take us. So thank you, LEDs, and thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Brandy. I thought that was important for you to share in this session as well. So thank you. And, you know, we might not get it right, but we're going to get it right because we're doing it together. And we're going to get it right because we bring students together in this space. And we actually start in a little funny way. We start with failure. Like, what? Failure? Tanae, tell us a little more about this whole process we're going through right now. And I know Abby and Mr. Osmus are smiling because they were just blown away how this thing got started. Tanae, take it away for a second. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No problem. Sure, mystery. Hello to all parents and LEDs on this call. So we started with failures and brainstorming failures and gaining insights and perspectives on by you guys, by parents, LEDs, and students, just like we're doing right now. So we started by taking these insights, pain points, and possible failures, and then we created micro teams. What these micro teams would do would each lead an initiative to solve a possible failure. And so that's
like, for instance, like the possible failure is we have Tejas on the call. You invited him because he's a brand new kid. And we have a lot of brand new kids, over 200 brand new kids, because we're growing our campus, right? And so Tejas is on the call. So like, what if like kids felt disconnected? That's a pain point, right, Tanae? And so we have a team like that's working on that specifically. Screen time. What else are we working on?
So we have multiple different micro design teams currently. So one micro design team is all about connections. So how can we allow students to connect with others emotionally without connecting physically? Or how can we allow new students to connect with others, because they might find it hard in a virtual setting. So we have multiple different types of micro design teams. It's one simple one.
We look forward. So tonight I'm just putting the pitch in. So come and watch you guys on Monday, kind of knock the socks off of everybody. I don't know, Risha is going to be there as well with the rest of the design team. And tonight you said something kind of funny to me. You know, you hear this saying that you make lemonade out of lemons. Today said, actually, how do we make lemonade out of crappy lemons? Right? So that's what we're trying to do right now, is just make lemonade out of some pretty crappy lemons. And that's the intent that they have. And we have kids that have the skill set to make that happen. So super appreciative of you and the design team working behind the scenes on that. Tejas, are you there too? I think I saw you.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
And on the call. And Tejas, you come from Los Angeles, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a new student this year in 7th grade.
And what are you looking forward to as being on that design team?
Just to help put like a new students' perspective, I guess, on how to include other new students in the school.
If that doesn't warm your heart and like make you tear up, I don't know what does, right? So we have a whole group just working on equity, because there was kids that disconnected from learning in March, not for any other reason, but we need to understand that and unpack that. And the kids are like in the middle of designing with equity. It punches me in the gut every time I talk about that. So thank you guys so much for joining together. We're super excited and appreciative of everything we can do together, because that's the future, right? The future is the place that we create. So thank you, YouTubers, for coming online, and we'll see you soon and in that stream. And I think that's it for tonight. That was 3 hours of Zoom. See, we could do it.